The first thing that we must do here tonight is to decide that we're going to be calm and that we are going to continue to stand up for what we know is right.
Hallelujah, I'm a traveling.
Black folks always lived in fear of white folks. And now they're seeing young people get rid of that myth of impotence.
Now I'm riding for equality. Hallelujah, I'm a traveling. Hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm a traveling down freedom's main line.
On Monday, February 1st, 1960, at 4:30 p.m., 4 freshmen from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, Ezell Blair Jr., and David Richmond, all on academic scholarships, sat down at the lunch counter inside the Woolworth store located at 132 South Elm Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. They were refused service and were ordered to leave immediately by the store's manager. These courageous, fearless young men, later known as the A&T 4, had no idea that on that very day, history would be forever changed and their heroism would inspire other sit-ins across the country. They were seeking more than what they ordered, sodas, coffee, and donuts. They were challenging the social order of the day, the unwritten rules of society requiring black people to stay out of white-owned restaurants and to use only designated drinking fountains and restrooms, which oftentimes were left dirty and very rarely cleaned. All 4 would emerge unscathed and eventually be recognized as heroes of the civil rights movement. The first sit-in was meticulously planned and executed. While all 4 students had considered different methods of nonviolent protest, Joseph McNeil suggested the approach of the sit-in to the other 3. To him, discipline in executing the protest was paramount. Months before the sit-in, McNeil attended a concert at which other African Americans behaved recklessly after being confronted by obvious white racist police officers, leaving him determined not to repeat their behavior. The plan for the sit-in was simple. The students would first stop at Ralph John's store so that Johns, a local white businessman who was sympathetic to their cause, could contact the media. They would then go inside the Woolworth's 5 and dime store to purchase toothpaste, chewing gum, and other personal items, maintaining their receipts as proof of purchase. After finishing their shopping, they would sit down at the lunch counter and courteously request service, and they would patiently wait until that service was provided. Blacks were allowed to patronize the dining area. However, they were restricted to a standing snack bar only, as the lunch counter was designated and reserved for whites only. The A&T 4 politely requested service at the counter, remaining calm and seated while their orders were refused and repeatedly ignored by the servers. The lunch counter manager contacted the police, but Johns had already alerted the local media. The police arrived only to painfully discover that they could not take any legal form of action because the 4 were paying customers of the store and had not taken any provocative actions. The very next day, a photo of the A&T 4 appeared in the local newspaper, and the protest swiftly expanded and gained national attention. The following day, February 2nd, the 4 returned to the Woolworth's lunch counter, this time accompanied by some 20 other neatly dressed students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical University, who also took seats at the counter. The scene played out again February 3rd and 4th. This time, white students from Bennett University, an all-female school, joined the protest, filling virtually every vacant seat and even spilling out of the store and onto the sidewalk outside. The protest eventually expanded to other stores, including Crest's 5 and dime located a block and a half away. Soon, crowds of students were inundating local lunch counters. As the protest grew, opposition grew viciously aggressive. Crowds of white men began appearing at lunch counters to harass and bully the protesters, often by spitting on them, uttering abusive and degrading language, and throwing eggs. In one case, a protester's coat was set on fire. The assailant would later be arrested. The protest continued each day that week. On Saturday, 1,400 students arrived at the Elm Street Woolworth store. A phone-in bomb threat cut the protest short, but the following week, sit-ins began at Woolworth stores in Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and Durham. Professors across the country began doing mock confrontations with their students to prepare them for the highly anticipated verbal and physical attacks. Soon, other five-and-dime and department stores with segregated lunch counters became targets of these demonstrations. Statewide, no protesters were arrested until 41 black students in a picket line at the Cameron Village Woolworths in Raleigh, North Carolina, were charged with trespassing. The sit-ins were wildly effective as it dropped the sales at Woolworths by 1/3. Seeing how quickly this boycott affected their profits, the higher-ups realized they would have to eradicate their segregation policy. And so, on July 25, 1960, 149 days after the initial sit-in began, a momentous victory had been won for all African Americans. Every Woolworth in the country was desegregated, allowing for both whites and blacks to be served at the same lunch counters. And with that, the fight had finally been won. The goal accomplished, and a decisive battle for civil rights ended victoriously. The sit-in conquest triggered the type of reaction the civil rights movement wanted: public condemnation of the treatment of those individuals, but also continuing to highlight the issue of desegregation in the South. For this reason, James Farmer, chairperson of the Congress of Racial Equality, quickly and aggressively began an extensive search for individuals to be a part of the next nationwide movement inspired by the A&T Four. Their demonstration of strength and resilience motivated Farmer to keep the momentum going and began organizing the next pivotal occurrence during the civil rights movement: the Freedom Rides. 13 individuals, 8 blacks and 5 white, including Charles Person, Diane Nash, and Hank Thomas, boarded 2 buses on May 4, 1961, to challenge the enforcing of desegregating public transportation throughout the South that was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court just 6 months earlier. Ultimately, 436 courageous, daring individuals would be called the Freedom Riders. Tonight, we present the rides that would forever defy racism and revolutionize America forever. All aboard! All aboard!